וגם מיומר איזה פרש בכתבי הארי, ז"ל יבין ביאסקל שכל מי שאינו מאמין באיזה דבר, לא אדון הוא בדבר זה, לדון ולהכריע. רק מכוער גדול לישראל. Who can judge in the Ari, what is legitimate and what's not? So only the Gedol Yisrael, only the great ones of Israel. He says here, Kachachme HaSfardim, like the Sephardic rabbis. In other words, because they are tuned into Kabbalah. Now, does he include the Vilna Gaon in this or not? I mean, Vilna Gaon is a great Kabbalist. That there's no question about it. People say, it's often said that Vilna Gaon was a greater Kabbalist than he was in revealed Torah. Now, I don't know if that's true or if people say that because it shows that he can argue against Chasidim. I don't know. V'afkam zot mishna shein tzarachi ki'im kishiyu hatovim b'ta'unim aleinu gam kein ma'amin b'golas harizal. Those who argue against us also believe in the Kabbalah of the Ari. They are great rabbis who believe in both the hidden and the revealed. And so we have to make a distinction between those rabbis and Hasidic rabbis. But we have not heard, he says, this kind of thing that somebody doesn't believe in the Arizal at all, in the Arizal's Kabbalah. Now, I think that may be an exaggeration, as the note said on the part of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of the Edi. But he is saying to his students, this is an argument, you can't win this. Bodod ha-sreifa shesarfu sefer yidua, and the burning of the book of the Baal Shem Tov's ethical will, you want to fight about that. Lo zu ha'ir, v'lo zu ha'derech asher chafetz b'Hashem. God doesn't want you to make a war over the fact that the Gaon's followers burned the book of the Baal Shem Tov. Because in the eyes of the Baal Shem Tov and his students, the tzava of the Rivash, the ethical will of the Baal Shem Tov, which outlines a lot of Kabbalah, was something new. He says, but we know, we know that it's been there forever. It's just that the Baal Shem Tov revealed certain things. And it's always had Kabbalah. I mean, the Kabbalah of the Arizal is a kind of new revelation. It's, as it says here, it was different than the Kabbalah of the Zohar. Zachru yimot olam, ki mi lanu gadol mimoshe b'daro hu haya Rambam. Zal asher ba'artz Sfarad gadol b'shem tov. We know that the Rambam was as great. It was. Seems like he's saying the Rambam was greater than Moshe, maybe for his generation. Ad shebachayev hayomer minasach hakadosh b'chayechon v'mechon. So it sounds like there was a version of Kaddish that included the Rambam. Right, this is the Rabbanan Kaddish, which asks God to support the rabbis and students, in their life and in our life. Right, and then it usually says in the life of the whole Jewish people. And apparently there was a version that added Moshe. And in the life of our Rabbi Moshe, meaning the Rambam, people would add that in. Interesting, it says here on the bottom, Kachna Guyude Teman, the Jews of Yemen would add in the name of the Rambam in Kaddish. That's pretty, I'd never heard that before. Because they saw how great the Rambam was. Now the Rambam also, of course, we know, supported the Jews of Yemen theologically, wrote letters in terms of their persecution. But far away, where they didn't know the Rambams, outside of the Sephardic world, they didn't early on, they didn't know while the Rambam was alive, and they didn't know how great he was. They thought the Rambam was a heretic, right? That he didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead. Now the Rambam, it's sort of funny because the Rambam in the commentary of the Mishnah, which he wrote early in his life, he does talk about the resurrection of the dead, and that's where his 13 beliefs are derived from his commentary on the 10th parak of Sanhedrin. But in the Mishnah Torah, if you look at the Mishnah Torah, which is his book of Jewish law, and I think a more popular book, if you look at his laws dealing with the Messianic era, He says there's no difference between our time and the Messianic era, except that the Jews will have sovereignty in Israel. And he's quoting a Mishnah there. And he says very clearly that it will not be a miraculous process. It will be a natural process. There will be nothing supernatural in the Messianic era. Now, he doesn't say there won't be the resurrection of the dead, but that does seem to obviate the resurrection of the dead. In fact, he even says, what do you do with verses like the wolf will lie down with the lamb at the time of the Messiah? He says it's a metaphor for the Jewish people having peace with those who have hated them. That's why for me, I think the recent Abraham Accords, feels, feels like another messianic thing to me. If you see it like the Rambam, then our era seems very messianic. But they did burn his books, So on the one hand, those who were near the Rambam saw him as so great, they put his name in the Kaddish, the Jews of Yemen. On the other hand, there were those that thought he was a heretic at his time, and they burned his books. In fact, one of the keynotes is about the burning of all the Talmuds in Paris by King Louis IX, Louis the Crusader, who was also called St. Louis, and in 1244. And the Ramban, who lived a little bit after the Rambam, he said that the burning of the Talmuds of Paris was caused spiritually by burning the Rambam's books. It was like a punishment for burning the Rambam's books. And the Ramban, who was very opposed to the Rambam at the beginning, changed his mind about the Rambam. Obviously, the Rambam has become, one of the most accepted rabbis of the last several thousand years. Sarfas Far, but they did burn his books. The Hainu Sefer Rishon, Misefer HaYudalid. The Sefer HaYudalid is the Yad HaChazaka, the Mishnah Torah, and they burned the first volume, which is interesting because the first volume is not where he says what I just quoted. The first volume is about basic ideas about theology. And they also built the Moreh Nevuchim, his guide to the perplexed. Chovat Kriya Afal Al Pi Chachamim Gedolim Beineim Shekaru Mashkas Brahma Melchus Tshuva. They disagreed with what he wrote in Hilchos Tshuva, that he said there are 5 people that are called Minim. A min is like Apikoros, like a heretic. Hayesh Sham Ribon Echad Avashu Guf Ubal Tamuna Yibachal Minim. The Rambam writes there that if you say there's one God, but that God has a body or an image, you are a heretic. And the Rambam there, was basically calling many people a heretic. Many Jews who were very learned accepted the Torah at face value and did believe that God is corporeal. We find that crazy because we are Maimonideans, because we live in the shadow of the Rambam. We are all Maimonideans, but right there on the page of the Rambam, when the Rambam says that God can't be corporeal, the Ravid, one of the main commentators in the Rambam, says, who's the Rambam to say this? There are many greater rabbis than us who believed it, who believed that God was corporeal, that God had an image. So he's saying that that's why they burned that volume of the Rambam. But also, datam litlot b'kotzir diatam. They didn't think to themselves, maybe we don't know as much as the Rambam. Atem b'divrei kodsho. Maybe we don't understand the Rambam. They didn't say that themselves. Question is bar. Notes people are quick to burn books. We know this on our own time, right? You have Nathan Slifkin. He tries to write a book 20 years ago about. I think it was a Lakewood Cola guy. I don't know. He became trained in science, and he wrote a book about how about evolution and how it could fit into the Torah. And they put it in Cherem. They were. I don't know if they do it anymore, but for a while, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, every month there was a new book that was excommunicated I'm talking about Orthodox authors, Orthodox rabbis. L'sofa de Rambam b'haradak zal akasher chof v'avar yamim rabim. When many days passed and many years, titzmach emes me'eretz. So then truth sprouted up from the ground. Yedu kol Yisrael ki Moshe emes. And the whole Jewish people realized that Moshe, meaning the Rambam, that his writings were true. And so it should be for us speedily in our days. So that's interesting. Even in the midst of this is a great message here. Even in the midst of this, incredible war, you have to give Rabbi Schneur Zalman a lot of credit. I mean, he really sees the big picture. He's basically saying, here's why the Vilna Gaon, the greatest rabbi maybe of our generation, is opposed to us. Here's where his belief comes from. You're not going to change his mind. But just like in the past in Jewish history, people have burned books and said, some people are heretics, and history has borne them out. He's saying that's how it's going to be for us. I don't know. Somebody asked, is the Gaon's mystical writing studied? I don't know. And I'm not familiar so much with the Gaon's writing. So that is the end of the letter from Rabbi Schneur Zalman. It's really, he does kind of take the high road, which is very. And I'll tell you, it's, as I mentioned yesterday, it does seem like Chassidut, it took 200 years, but it's spreading like wildfire. It certainly has borne itself out. It's interesting what movements have kind of succeeded, which movements have stood the test of time and which have not. Shabtai Tzvi did not. Jacob Frank did not. Chassidut, right, which put yourself in the shoes of that moment, right? They think this is heresy, but it did. The reform still around, but I don't know if we would say it's a success. Maybe we would. Maybe we'd say it has helped to connect many Jews who would not otherwise be connected. But certainly its aims at the beginning, of appealing to the Jewish people, of making prayer more formal. I don't know. On the other hand, 80% of those who identify as Jews probably identify as Reform. That's still true. No. I mean, as an Orthodox rabbi, I don't see that as correct. I don't see the Reform movement as something that has stood the test of time. But objectively, I don't know. Interesting to see. Maybe we don't know yet. What else do you have? Other movements also. Right, with the rationalism of the medieval period. Sefer Chasidim, we have Chasidei Ashkenaz, the pietists of Germany in the 1100s, 1200s. They were kind of their own movements. So they did not survive, but their books survived. We do quote their books. Yeah, I don't know. Are there, within Orthodoxy today, are there different movements? Are they going to survive? Are they? No, I don't know. Obviously, in the moment, you can't always know. So that was 1797. Now, just after that, the end of 1797, October, Tafkuf Nun Ches, right? This letter, we think, was the year before. And but just after this, we have a cherem. The Gaon does not give up, although the Gaon, I think, almost. Here's an introduction to this. This is the cherem. This is the excommunication. It's another excommunication. It's a resurgence, a reinvigoration of the battle against Chasidim. And this is right. The first excommunication was 1772. This is 25 years later. The Gaon dies on October 9th, 1797. Yotes Tishrei. Sukkot. That sort of ruins Sukkot for people. Interesting. And the Chasidim in Vilna keep the party going. Simchas Beis HaShoeva. I guess there's a big Simchas Beis HaShoeva, there's a big party you have in Sukkot, memory of the temple. And I guess the Chasidim, now this fits the Chasidim, right? There are people who are not going to stop a Yom Tov celebration just because somebody dies. but that creates, I guess, a rift and a resurgence of the hatred against Chasidim. Now, it's an interesting question that this brings up, which is to what extent is this about the Vilna Gaon and his personality, and his awesome, personality as the leader of the Jewish people. To what extent is this about content, and to what extent is this about, in that sense, party politics? Remember, one of the great criticisms of the Chasidim was they don't give the Vilna Gaon enough honor. So we'll have to tease that out, I think. For the Gaon, it's about content, it's about Kabbalah. For others, it's about, these people are crazy. But I think maybe what seems to loom large also is the cultural difference, and that we're not Chasidim, that the Gaon, was not a Chassid, as opposed to everything. Okay. See you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.